Welcome back to Pirate Money Radio with your host, Kevin Freeman.
Well, we just heard Jared Bernstein, the number one, the head, the chairman of the Council on Economic Advisors, the top dog, explaining to our president, Biden, exactly how money is created and where it comes from. And Mike, what did you think about what he said?
Well, again, some of that language, we do print money and we do lend, but it's really difficult to understand. I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. It was in a documentary. It's kind of sad. But what is money? How is it used? Where does it come from? Let's talk about that, and then we'll get into and explain why we are called pirate money, what that exactly means.
Yeah, and I know before the break, I kind of teased this George Washington thing, but we talked briefly about why would he have a sign on him that says it's time to implement this pirate money clause? Is it because of what we just saw here? I can't really explain what we do in the government with money.
No, it's because the government has lost track of what money is meant to be, what it should be. Washington knew what it was. A dollar was a 0.7734 troy ounces of fine silver. It's called a Spanish mill dollar. They would cut it up into 8 pieces. They called it pieces of 8. And then there was gold version called gold doubloons. And gold doubloons and pieces of 8, we played that Hardy Boys clip. Bottom line is that was pirate money, but it was also foundational money for the United States system. When they look at the Constitution and they said a dollar, they meant that, a silver dollar. Now, you've got 2 stickers on you from the convention. Tell us what those stickers are.
Oh, yeah. I've got one from famous Texan Davy Crockett, who says, CBC may go to hell. My gold is going to Texas.
CBDC may go to hell, but my gold. Central bank digital currency, we've talked about that. That is a very dangerous thing. It's Biden bucks is another term for it. It's Executive Order 14067, March of 2022. The President of the United States ordered the Federal Reserve to study and implement digital currency that would completely control what we do, how we do, and so forth. We'll talk about that in a bit in the program. What's the other sticker?
The other one is Alexander Hamilton, our first Secretary of Treasury, and I think if we asked him what the Fed does with money, he'd do a better job than what we just heard out there. But we maybe interpreted this a little bit, but I think he would say, I support the Texas pirate money revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, because they know what money is. Unlike, it sounds Jared Bernstein, money is 3 things. It's a unit of account, it's a means of exchange, and it's a store of value. What that means is a unit of account, when you take something, you can price it in dollars, and you know how many dollars it takes to buy a candy bar. That's just hard for me to get my head around because it takes more than $1 to buy candy. I remember when I was a kid, it cost 10 cents to buy a candy bar. My dad would tell me penny candy was a candy bar, but now it costs a couple of dollars at the local convenience store, 7-Eleven, Quick Trip, whatever. It's a unit of account. You can measure things in terms of dollars. It's a means of exchange. Mike, if I had chickens and you had gasoline and we wanted to exchange them, we would actually exchange dollars rather than you asking me to bring 3 chickens to pay for so much gas and so forth. So it's a means of exchange, and it's supposed to be a store of value, meaning that if I put aside a certain amount of money in 10 years, that money would still have value. Unfortunately, 90% of the value of the dollar has declined since 1971, 99%, something close to that, since the dollar was introduced as a Federal Reserve note. And I used this illustration recently in a talk that we gave together here at this convention, where if one person took 10 $20 gold coins in 1924, 100 years ago, and said, I'm going to leave these for my grandkids or great-grandkids, and another person took 10 $20 Federal Reserve notes and put that in an envelope to leave to their grandkids 100 years later, which ones would be happy? The one opening the 10 gold coins or the one opening the 10 $20 bills?
Well, unlike that economic advisor, I'm going to pick the coins.
You're going to go with the coins. Well, good choice. If we were on the game show or The Price is Right or whatever, you would have about $24,000 in today's money with the 10 gold coins, or $200. Yeah. And that should illustrate whether or not paper money is a store of value or Now, something real like gold is a store of values.
History. We're getting into the history of money here, and at first you're like, well, why would I want to know about the history of money? But I think the problem that we've all fallen into is it's too easy to say money is the dollar, it's the paper money, it's fiat currency. That's just the way it is. There's that normalcy bias out there. Walk through a little bit more about that history piece.
Exactly right. All right, the founders. Let's go back to George Washington when he was General Washington, not President Washington, but when he was general at Valley Forge. We all know the story of Valley Forge, how the troops were there and they were starving and they had no shoes. And, it really was a bad situation. Why was that? That was because the Continental Congress had allocated money. They called it, the money they allocated, Continental Notes. And they said on there, payable to the bearer in 4 Spanish milled dollars, which are pieces of 8, or the equivalent value in gold and silver, which they said was real money. The problem was they didn't have anything to back up the paper. They were printing unbacked paper money, and it collapsed in value. And Washington said a wagon load full of Continentals would not buy a wagon full of supplies. And they just stack it up. It was worthless paper. They stuffed it in their socks because they didn't have shoes.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. Or they'd burn it at the fire in order to keep warm. Now, that's happened, by the way, not just to the Continentals. That's happened in Venezuela, where money has lined the streets because it's unbacked paper money. It's worthless. Okay, so when they had finished that, they said, we're going to have an Article of Confederation, and every state's going to have its own money. And they did. All 13 colonies became 13 states, and New York had their money, and Massachusetts had their money, but it had differing weights and measures. Different amounts of gold. Some of them would put base metals in it, which is known as debasing the currency, which has always ruined civilizations. It ruined Rome when they debased the denarius. The silver content of the denarius went from 100% to 0% over several hundred years, and it ruined the Roman Empire. And the Articles of Confederation had debased coins at various levels among the states, and so that was a failed monetary system. May have been why the Articles actually failed. And then we wrote a Constitution. And in the Constitution, James Madison made certain that when they wrote about money, they said that a state can make nothing but gold and silver coins, real gold, real silver, to be legal tender in a state. And that was brilliant. That was one of the greatest things that they did. And then they prevented us from having bills of credit.
And that's what we're calling the pirate money clause.
That is the pirate money clause. That's what... here President Washington's talking about, but they said no bills of credit. You know what a bill of credit is?
A bill of credit is probably something like the dollar on my billfold.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bill. You call it a dollar bill. It's also called a note. It'll say it's a Federal Reserve note. It is a promise to pay, just like that Continental back during the Revolutionary War. It's I will pay the bearer 4 Spanish milled dollars or the equivalent in gold and silver. It's a promise to pay backed by nothing. It's different from a warehouse receipt. For example, a warehouse receipt would be Bank of Kentucky notes that were deemed constitutional. The Constitution forbids bills of credit. It says it right in there. It doesn't give the power to the federal government, and it certainly prohibited the states from issuing bills of credit. Hey, we'll pay you on Tuesday. States can borrow money, but they can't issue bills of credit to be used as currency. But a Bank of Kentucky note was deemed in 1837 in a court case taken to the Supreme Court, won 6-1 in favor of the Bank of Kentucky, allowing them to take gold and silver on deposit in their Bank of Kentucky and issue out what were essentially warehouse receipts. Our warehouse has on store, one silver dollar or 1/8 of a silver dollar, and you could take your warehouse receipts and turn them into the Bank of Kentucky and get your real money out, or you could exchange them as currency. And the court ruled that's legitimate as long as you actually have the silver and gold that you're supposed to have.
So if I have silver and gold, let's say, in the Texas Bullion Depository, and instead of using those notes, I use my debit card, it's the same thing.
That's where we're going. That's pirate money. That's the clause, 1837, Briscoe versus Bank of Kentucky. That is the court case, that's the seminal court case where the court ruled that, yes, you could take gold and silver, gold doubloons and pieces of 8, and put them on reserve, or gold and silver bullion, because remember the Continental said 4 Spanish mill dollars, 4 pieces of 8, or the equivalent in gold and silver. You put them on deposit, and then you could, if you actually have them on deposit, it's not a bill of credit. It is actually a warehouse receipt.
I don't have to sing or anything like that when I pay for it with this card, do I?
No, you don't have gold doubloons. No, but it's kind of fun.
It's kind of sticking in my mind. I'm afraid I might be doing that.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that we played it. But all right, so American money evolved from Spanish coins at the beginning of the foundation to the Bank of Kentucky issued notes that were really warehouse receipts. And eventually, during the Civil War, they went to completely unbacked paper currency known as greenbacks, and that was the official money. How did we evolve? We evolved from the Spanish coins, real gold and silver, to greenbacks, and even the Confederacy had Confederate money, none of which was, and by the way, the courts challenged it. They lost, and then they packed the courts. A long story. I recount all of it in the book Pirate Money, which if you read it, you'll read the story. But there's a story in there that I think explains why we are so ignorant. Jared Bernstein, so ignorant about how money is created. But 100 years ago, even school children knew how it was created. You remember the movie, The Wizard of Oz?
Absolutely.
All right.
Am I going to be singing another song here soon?
You know, we are going to be hearing about the trip to the Wizard of Oz. But before we get there, I do want to cover a couple more things. And then after the break, we'll hit the Wizard of Oz hard. Bottom line is that people used to know what money is. Today, they don't. We just take it for granted. And that's the problem, is we don't understand. You go to the store and you say, why does this cost twice as much as it did before? Is it because the cost of things are going up, or is it because the value of the money is going down?
Well, Joe Biden tells me it's those evil manufacturers and businesses.
Yeah, the inflation, that's it. No, the definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. And if you print lots and lots of money, what you're going to end up with is inflation. That's the cause of it. It is not because evil manufacturers have raised prices. They're barely keeping their heads above water, just like you are at home. If you're dealing with gasoline prices, if you're dealing with food prices, restaurant prices, a hamburger costing $12 when it should cost $4, that's because we've produced and thrown way too much money in the system. Inflation is and always has been a monetary phenomenon. That's the great economist Milton Friedman taught us that. So bottom line is, when we come back from the break, we're going to be talking the wonderful Wizard of Oz and what school children know that we've forgotten today. How can we learn from this kids movie and book? We'll be right back after the break.